In today's video, we're cooking this delicious, creamy cauliflower and beans without using any cream or butter. People often think that you need to add a lot of fat into a dish to get that lovely creaminess that you want. But using nutritious plant-based ingredients, you can get the exact same result. And of course, being a chef for the last 10 years, I've got a few options to really take this dish to the next level, such as a tangy basil salsa verde and a fresh fennel and rocket salad. So let's get cooking. I've had this pan preheating for a few minutes and I'm going to add in some olive oil. It's quite a heavy based pan, so it takes a while to heat up. For the cauliflower, I like to use a slightly smaller knife. This is a tomato knife and it's serrated, which is really helpful. And we're just going to go around the core, removing the florets. I just find it easier and safer to use a smaller knife for this part. The stalk I'll keep for a stir fry or something like that. Fun fact about brassicas like broccoli, cabbage and cauliflower, they contain sulforaphane, which is a powerful antioxidant. It's released when you cut into these vegetables, but you must leave them for 10 to 15 minutes to allow the antioxidants to build up adequately. So next time you're cooking with brassicas, cut them up in advance, go have a cup of tea or coffee, and then come back and your meal is going to be extra healthy. And now we'll just cut the florets into slightly smaller pieces so that they're all the same size, going for bite size here. Some of them are already small enough, which is great. And I'm always cutting through the stem rather than the floret, as you just create a lot of mess if you do that. And don't worry if some bits are a bit smaller or a bit bigger than others. Just get them roughly the same size so they cook evenly. Poppy has just woken up from her nap and it's perfect timing as I've just cut the cauliflower so I can leave it to build up in sulforaphane, which is the antioxidant. Then once the oil is hot, I'm going in with my cauliflower and we'll cook this until it starts to get a nice bit of color on it. And I'm going to add a generous pinch of salt to the cauliflower. Leaving the cauliflower undisturbed is essential for getting that lovely golden crust, but it's going to start the flavor layering of this bean dish. Only stir it every couple of minutes as you want some nice caramelization to develop. Make sure you have enough oil in the pan so that the cauliflower is actually frying and getting some lovely color on it. And then once you've got some nice browning on the cauliflower, we can turn down the heat. We're simply going to finely chop the white onion, and we'll go in with the onion and the garlic. Also going to add a small pinch of salt. I much prefer to season as I go along rather than just sort of dumping in a load of salt at the end. This gives the salt time to dissolve so you know exactly how salty your dish is. Whereas if you add it in at the end, it won't have time to dissolve and you might end up adding in too much. Cauliflower has quite a tough exterior, so salting it early in the cooking process is essential for that seasoning to diffuse into its dense structure. This ensures the whole pieces of cauliflower are seasoned throughout, rather than them just being salty on the outside. Then I've got these stems from the fennel, which we'll be making a salad with later, and I'm just going to finely slice these. They're slightly more fibrous, so they benefit from being cooked down towards the beginning of the dish, but they definitely should not be thrown out, that's for sure. Also going in with the fennel stalks. I've also got these basil stalks from the basil that I've used in the salsa verde, and I'm just going to finely chop them as well. And the basil stems as well. It's smelling really delicious now. The aromas coming from the basil and the fennel and the caramelization on the cauliflower just smells delicious. I'm actually going to add the zest of 1 lemon now. The zest is more sort of tangy and concentrated in lemony flavor, slightly less bright than the juice, but really nice. And that's just going to infuse into the dish. We'll go in with our vegetable stock now. And our butter beans, or you could use cannellini beans, or pinto beans could be nice. You could also use some of the bean water. That's a nice way to make it creamy as well. So we'll just bring that to a simmer now. Now we don't want to cook this for too long because we've already cooked the cauliflower while we were getting it nice and colored, so we don't want to overcook it. So I think about 5 to 7 minutes should be perfect. For a little extra crunch in this salad, I'm just going to toast some pumpkin seeds, but any seeds or nuts that you fancy will work perfectly. I'm just toasting them in a dry pan with a little bit of salt, just for a few minutes. Once they've got a slight tinge of brown on them, take them off the heat and let them cool down. And I would always put them onto a plate or bowl just to ensure they don't continue cooking and burn. For the fennel, I've just removed the stems. These are a bit tougher, but they're great in a stew or braise. Then I'm going to make use of my mandolin on a pretty thin setting, and we're just going to thinly slice the fennel. Of course, being careful not to cut yourself. Definitely use a hand guard if you've got one. This will create these beautiful, thin, delicate, and crispy slices of fennel. Perfect for a salad. And if you're not going to use them straight away, I'd store them in some ice cold water so they stay lovely and crisp. If you don't have a mandolin, that's absolutely fine. I would cut the celery in half like so to create a nice stable base, and then just thinly slice it with your knife, using a really nice and sharp knife so you can get it extra thin. And just make sure you've got your fingertips tucked in, you've got your thumb at the back of the fennel, and then you can use your knuckle to just guide the knife through the fennel. Getting it really lovely and thin. This salad is delicious with fresh orange in it as well, but maybe not with this particular bean dish. So in goes our rocket and our pumpkin seeds, which I may have been snacky on just a little bit. And to dress it, I'm going to keep it really simple, just a little drizzle of balsamic vinegar, touch of olive oil, and a small pinch of sea salt. Don't need to add pepper as the rocket is already quite peppery. That's going to be a really nice fresh and crunchy salad to go with these creamy beans. Okay, this is looking great. Going to go in with some lemon juice and a good grating of black pepper. I find creamy bean dishes always need a good amount of black pepper. For a bit of contrast, a nice little bit of heat. Or you could add chili, of course, if you're into that. Okay, so now we're going to add a couple ladles of our braised beans and cauliflower to a blender. Try to get some of the liquid in there as well so it blends properly. Then to make it even more creamy, we're going to add in some firm tofu, then sun-dried tomatoes, a little smoked paprika, and some ground coriander, just to add even more citrusy goodness. Then just blend until perfectly smooth. And then just pour in that creamy goodness. A little bit stuck. That's better. Definitely going to need to get the spatula out. In hindsight, you probably only need to do one ladle of the cauliflower and beans, as you have got the tofu, which thickens it up nicely. But here we've got a deliciously creamy bean dish, and now we just need to add on our salsa. For this beautiful basil salsa verde, I'm going to be using the pestle and mortar, and I'm also going to put it on a tea towel, just to ensure I don't damage my chopping board or a kitchen surface. So we'll start by adding 1 garlic clove. You could also do this in a food processor, and a small pinch of salt. And then we'll just start bashing this garlic clove. After bashing it, you can do a little muddling sort of technique, where you just push down and move the pestle around the mortar to create a really nice paste. The salt is going to help break it down as well, really extract all the moisture. And that is a nice garlic paste we've got there. I'm then going to add some capers. These are going to add a lovely salty and tangy flavor. You could add them later on and have them slightly chunkier. And we'll just give them a good bashing as well. Next to go in is the basil, and I'm just going to rip all the leaves from the stems, as best as I can at least, and that's all going to go in. Good amount of basil there. Smells incredible. So good. And I will keep these stalks and probably finely chop them and use them in the main dish. And then once again, we're just going to give this a good pounding and get it really nice and pureed down. I do find using a pestle and mortar instead of a food processor, you really properly extract all the lovely oils from the basil, or whichever herb you choose to use. You'll be amazed at how a large bunch of basil will just disappear. And then after a few minutes, you should have a lovely green paste with the garlic and the capers in there. You can now start to add your liquid components. I'm going to go in with some lemon juice for a little bit of acidity. Of course, we have some acidity from the capers as well. And then I'm just going to gradually add in some olive oil until it's a nice consistency for drizzling over this dish. Just adding it gradually so it stays emulsified with the other ingredients. Emulsified meaning it hasn't separated and it's a nice cohesive mix. Give it a taste and then adjust the seasoning. I'm going to add a pinch of salt, a little black pepper. And there you go, that is going to be incredibly tasty on top of this braised cauliflower and beans, adding in some freshness and acidity to the dish. Adding in something acidic to a creamy dish like this is essential for cutting through the richness, but also adding a brightness that prevents the dish from tasting dull. Looks so good, all it needs now is a nice drizzle of this salsa verde. I think some lovely crunchy sourdough would be delicious with this, that's for sure. Be generous with your salsa verde. You really need it to cut through that creaminess with a bit of freshness and acidity. This is the type of dish that looks like you spent hours in the kitchen because it is so tasty and visually appealing, but it really is quite simple. Okay, now for the best part, because I am absolutely starving. I'm gonna serve up a few good ladles of our creamy cauliflower and beans with that beautiful basil salsa verde. Drizzle over a little extra. Would be rude not to. A nice handful of that fennel and rocket salad with those Moorish crunchy pumpkin seeds. And then it's got to be some crunchy brown homemade sourdough. It's going to be a match made in heaven. Okay, let's dig in. I seriously can't stop eating. So good. This dish is honestly so delicious, such a lovely combination of flavors. You've got the sort of earthy and nutty cauliflower, sweetness coming from those sun-dried tomatoes, and then you get a really nice peppery aniseed freshness from the rocket and fennel salad. And then to finish it off, that lovely tangy and vibrant basil salsa verde, and you really can't go wrong with a nice bit of crusty sourdough to mop up those creamy beans. Enjoy. Thank you so much for watching. For another easy but totally delicious bean recipe, check out this video.